There is a hidden force that determines whether people listen to you, respect you, and follow your lead. It is not loudness, not aggression, not the ability to dominate a conversation. It is something much deeper, something most people overlook. Arthur Schopenhauer, one of the greatest philosophers of all time, understood this force better than anyone. He knew that true power is not about forcing control over others, it is about creating an undeniable presence. And the secret to this presence? Silence. Not just the absence of words, but the mastery of restraint, the control over impulses, the ability to hold space without filling it with noise. Schopenhauer's rule is simple: the person who speaks the least, but with the most precision, controls the room. Think about the most magnetic people you have ever met. Were they the ones who talked endlessly, who filled every silence with words, who always had something to say? Or were they the ones who spoke with intention, who listened more than they talked, who made every word count? The paradox of power is that the more you speak without purpose, the less people respect what you say. The more you react impulsively, the more predictable you become. The more you try to prove yourself, the weaker you appear. Schopenhauer understood that silence is not emptiness, it is a weapon. But when used correctly, it commands attention, forces others to lean in, makes people want to hear what you have to say.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Most people fear silence. They rush to fill it, thinking that if they are not speaking, they are being ignored. But the truth is, the moment you stop fearing silence is the moment you begin to control it. Imagine you are in a debate, an argument, or even just a casual conversation. Someone challenges you, expecting you to react, to defend yourself immediately. But instead of responding right away, you pause. You hold the silence for a few seconds. What happens? The energy shifts. The other person begins to feel uncomfortable, unsure of how to interpret your lack of reaction. They start to second-guess themselves. They begin to wait for your response, rather than push their own agenda. In that moment, you have taken control of the interaction without saying a single word. Schopenhauer believed that power is not about overpowering others, it is about making them adjust to you. And the fastest way to make people adjust to you is to stop reacting to everything immediately. Most people are slaves to their emotions, to their impulses. They react the moment they feel challenged, the moment they feel uncomfortable, the moment they feel like they need to prove themselves. But the person who can withhold their reaction, who can sit in the discomfort without rushing to fill it, commands the situation. This is why silence is so powerful, it forces others to engage with you on your terms. But this is where most people fail. They think that silence alone is enough, that if they simply say less, they will automatically gain respect. But it is not just about speaking less, it is about how you carry yourself in that silence. If you are silent but anxious, if your body language betrays insecurity, if your silence is not intentional but merely hesitant, people will not respect it. But true commanding silence requires composure. It requires the ability to hold stillness without shrinking, to be quiet without seeming weak, to exude confidence even when you are saying nothing at all. This is the skill that separates those who are merely quiet from those who are commanding. Think about the most powerful leaders in history. They did not need to shout to be heard. They did not need to dominate conversations to be respected. Their presence alone was enough to command attention, And this is where Schopenhauer's rule becomes even more profound, because it is not just about conversation, but about life itself. The less reactive you are, the more control you have. The more you can sit with discomfort instead of immediately trying to fix it, the stronger you become. The more you can allow silence to exist without fearing it, the more people will naturally gravitate toward you. Because in a world where everyone is constantly seeking validation, constantly trying to prove themselves, the person who does not need to automatically stands out. But here's where things get even more interesting. Silence is not just a tool for commanding attention, it is also a tool for understanding people on a level they do not even realize. When you speak less, you hear more. You begin to notice things others miss. The nervous habits people have when they are lying. The slight hesitations in their voice when they are uncertain. The unspoken emotions behind their words. Most people are too busy thinking about what they are going to say next to truly listen. But the person who listens more than they speak becomes dangerous because they see reality as it is, not just as people present it. Schopenhauer believed that most people are trapped in their own minds, too concerned with themselves to truly observe the world around them. But when you practice intentional silence, when you stop trying to control every conversation and instead watch, you begin to see the truth. You see how people contradict themselves, how they reveal their insecurities without meaning to, how their words and actions rarely align. And once you see these things, you gain an advantage that cannot be taught. Because you are no longer just participating in interactions, you are reading them. But let's take this even further. What happens when you apply this rule to your personal life? What happens when you stop reacting emotionally to every little thing? When you stop explaining yourself unnecessarily? When you stop giving away your power with words that do not need to be spoken? You become unpredictable, and unpredictability is one of the greatest forms of power. When people cannot anticipate your next move, they must respect it. When people do not know how you will react, they must think before they speak to you. When people sense that you are not easily swayed by emotions or social pressure, they begin to value your presence differently. This is why silence is not passivity, it is control. It is the ability to dictate the pace of an interaction without force, to create space for your words to actually mean something when you choose to use them. And this is where most people misunderstand Schopenhauer's rule. They think power is about volume, about dominance, about making sure they are always seen and heard. But real power is quieter than that. It does not beg for attention, it draws it in. So the question is, do you control your silence, or does your silence control you? Because if you have ever felt ignored, overlooked, unheard, the solution is not to speak more, it is to speak less, but with more weight. To stop trying to prove yourself and start allowing others to come to you. To stop reacting and start watching. To stop fearing silence and start owning it. Because once you master this, once you understand how to hold silence rather than run from it, you will notice something incredible. People will start listening to you before you even speak. And that is the kind of power that cannot be taken away. Silence is not nothingness. It is not absence. It is one of the most powerful tools of influence, control, and psychological dominance that exists. Schopenhauer understood that most people live in reaction. They hear something, they feel something, and they immediately respond. They cannot sit with uncertainty. They cannot withstand the tension of a moment left open. But the person who can hold silence, who can resist the urge to react, gains an invisible power over those who cannot. This is because silence creates a vacuum. And in human psychology, vacuums must be filled. If you do not fill it, the other person will. And the moment they do, they are now following your lead, adjusting to your pace, revealing their thoughts while yours remain hidden. Imagine two people negotiating. One of them makes an offer. The other one simply sits there, saying nothing, letting the silence stretch. The first person starts feeling uncomfortable. They start doubting themselves. They start talking again, maybe justifying their offer, maybe lowering their price, maybe revealing their own uncertainty. Without realizing it, they have lost control of the conversation. They filled the silence with their own weakness, and the other person who simply waited now holds the advantage. This is why silence is terrifying to most people. It forces them to confront their own thoughts, their own insecurities, their own need for validation. And if you can wield it correctly, you can make people reveal themselves without even realizing they are doing it. But silence is not just about power in conversation. It is about control over perception itself. The more someone talks, the more predictable they become. The more predictable they become, the less respected they are. The less respected they are, the less influence they hold. This is why the most powerful figures in history were often the least reactive. They did not speak just to speak. They spoke when it mattered. And because they spoke less, their words carried more weight. People listened because they knew that when this person spoke, it was not out of impulse, not out of insecurity, but out of deliberation. And this is where Schopenhauer's rule becomes even more dangerous. Because it is not just about silencing the external world, it is about silencing yourself. Most people think power is about controlling others. But true power begins with controlling your own impulses. The desire to speak when nervous. The need to explain yourself when you don't have to. The urge to react when someone provokes you. Most people cannot control these things. They are slaves to their emotions, to their need for validation, to their fear of being misunderstood. But the person who can sit in that discomfort, who does not need to respond, who lets people project their assumptions onto them without feeling the urge to correct them, that person becomes untouchable. Think about every time you have ever regretted saying something, every time you have overshared, every time you have explained yourself more than necessary, every time you have reacted emotionally when you should have stayed calm. In every one of those moments, silence would have been the better choice. But silence is hard because it forces you to trust yourself, to trust that you do not need to defend yourself, to trust that your presence alone is enough, and to trust that allowing people to misunderstand you is sometimes more powerful than correcting them. And this is why silence is such a rare skill, because it requires restraint, and restraint is something most people do not have. They think that if they are not constantly proving themselves, they will be forgotten. But the truth is, the more you withhold, the more people want from you. The less you explain, the more mysterious you become. The less you react, the more people wonder what you are thinking. And in that wondering, they give you power, because now they are the ones adjusting to you. But let's take this even further. Silence is not just about commanding attention and respect, it is about shaping perception itself. The less you say, the more people project onto you. They fill in the gaps with their own assumptions. If you are quiet but composed, people assume you are wise. If you are silent in conflict, people assume you are calculating. If you do not react when insulted, people assume you are above it. And in every one of these cases, their assumption benefits you, because they are creating an image of you that is stronger than anything you could have built with words. This is why the greatest manipulators, leaders, and strategic thinkers throughout history understood the power of silence. It is why the most respected figures do not explain themselves unnecessarily. It is why the most feared people are often the quietest in the room. When you do not reveal everything, people are forced to guess. And when they are guessing, they are uncertain. And when they are uncertain, they are off balance. And when they are off balance, they are controllable. Now think about how this applies to your own life. How many times have you weakened your position simply by speaking too soon? How many times have you given away your thoughts, your emotions, your intentions just because you couldn't tolerate the tension of silence? How many times have you made yourself smaller by over-explaining, by justifying yourself when no one even asked you to? Every unnecessary word you speak is power given away. And once you realize this, your entire approach to communication changes. Because now you stop reacting, you stop explaining, you stop trying to prove yourself. You realize that most of the time, the most powerful thing you can do is say nothing. Let them wonder. Let them question. Let them fill in the silence with their own thoughts. Because in that space, you are not losing control, you are taking it. And once you master this, once you understand that silence is not weakness but containment, you will notice something incredible. People will start respecting you more without knowing why. They will start listening to you more without realizing what changed. They will start adjusting to you instead of the other way around. Because the truth is, the person who speaks the least, but with the most intentionality, is the person who commands the most influence. And the person who can sit in silence without discomfort is the person who controls the direction of every interaction. Schopenhauer understood this. He knew that most people are trapped in their own noise, in their own need to be seen, in their own fear of being forgotten. But the person who does not need to be loud, who does not need to be constantly seen, who does not need to prove anything, that person becomes the one everyone notices the most. So the question is, can you sit in silence and own it? Can you resist the urge to react, to explain, to fill the space with unnecessary words? Can you let people project their assumptions onto you without feeling the need to correct them? Can you trust that your presence alone is enough? Because the moment you can, you will see something incredible happen. People will lean in when you speak. They will listen more closely. They will respect you without knowing why. And that is the kind of power that cannot be taken away. People operate under an illusion that words are their primary weapon, that the more they say, the more they control. But words are weak when used without restraint. The real battlefield is not in conversation, not in argument, not in debate. It is in presence. The way you carry yourself before you even speak. The energy you project without saying a single word. This is where real influence is created. Schopenhauer's rule is not just about silence, it is about how you inhabit silence. The difference between a person whose silence is ignored and a person whose silence commands attention is not in the silence itself. It is in their presence. Most people make the mistake of thinking presence is something external, that it comes from status, from wealth, from power. But presence is not given to you, it is created by how you control yourself. But the moment you walk into a room, before you even say anything, people have already judged you. They have already decided whether to respect you, whether to listen to you, whether to take you seriously. And this judgment is based on signals they are not even aware they are reading. The way you hold yourself, and the way you move. The way you react or do not react to the energy around you. Presence is psychological warfare. It is about controlling perception before words are even exchanged. It is about ensuring that when you do speak, people listen. And this is why most people fail. They speak before they have established presence. They try to force influence through words rather than allowing presence to create influence for them. The person who speaks first in a high-stakes situation is often the one who loses. The person who reacts first is the one who reveals their position. The person who fills silence too quickly is the one who shows weakness. Because the more predictable you are, the easier you are to control. Schopenhauer understood that the most powerful people in any room are not the ones who talk the most. They are the ones who make others want to hear them. And this is not done through noise, it is done through withholding. When you do not immediately respond, when you do not rush to fill silence, when you do not react impulsively, you create tension. And tension is where influence is born. People lean in when there is tension. They listen more closely. They become more invested. Because the human mind hates open loops. It craves resolution. And the person who controls when that resolution happens controls the entire interaction. This is where most people lose power in their day-to-day lives. They speak too soon. They explain too much. They try to prove themselves when no proof is needed. They think that if they do not constantly assert themselves, they will be forgotten. But the opposite is true. The person who speaks only when necessary, who allows silence to exist without needing to fill it, who moves with deliberate control rather than nervous energy, that person becomes magnetic. Because silence combined with presence forces others to adjust to you. And the moment people are adjusting to you, rather than the other way around, you control the dynamic. But presence is not just about silence. It is about restraint in all things, and the way you handle eye contact. Most people either avoid it or overuse it. But the person who can hold eye contact without aggression, who can maintain it without flinching but without trying to dominate, creates an immediate sense of authority. The way you move. Most people are either too stiff or too restless. But the person who moves with measured intention, who does not rush, who does not fidget, who does not shift their weight nervously, signals control. The way you react under pressure. Most people show their emotions immediately. But the person who can hold stillness in the face of tension, who does not immediately react when provoked, who does not let emotions dictate their actions, that person becomes unreadable. And unreadability is power. Because people fear what they do not understand. They respect what they cannot easily categorize. And the moment you become unpredictable, when people cannot be sure how you will respond, when they cannot easily anticipate your reactions, you gain a psychological edge that cannot be taught. This is why Schopenhauer's rule is so dangerous. It is not just about commanding attention. It is about controlling how people perceive you before they even realize they are being influenced. Most people will never master this. They are too reactive, too impulsive, too afraid of being seen as cold or distant. But the truth is, the person who can hold presence without needing constant validation will always be the one who commands the most respect. Because respect is not given to those who demand it, it is given to those who do not need to demand it at all. Think about the people in your life who you instinctively respect. They are not the ones who constantly try to assert themselves. They are not the ones who explain themselves unnecessarily. They are not the ones who react emotionally to everything. They are the ones who do not give away their power, but who do not need to be loud to be heard, who do not need to be aggressive to be taken seriously, who do not need to defend themselves because their presence alone is enough. This is why Schopenhauer's rule is the ultimate silent hack for commanding respect instantly. It is not about manipulation. It is not about tricks. It is about understanding human nature, understanding that people are drawn to those who do not chase their approval, who do not react impulsively, who do not need to constantly prove themselves. And once you internalize this, everything changes. The way people treat you, the way they listen to you, the way they perceive you. You stop being just another voice in the crowd. You become the presence that shapes the room itself. Because in the end, power does not belong to those who talk the most. It belongs to those who control perception the best. And perception is controlled not through noise, but through restraint, and through composure, through the ability to hold silence without breaking it, to hold presence without forcing it, to hold power without needing to announce it. And the question is, are you strong enough to do this? Are you strong enough to sit in silence without discomfort, to move without nervousness, to speak only when necessary, and to become unreadable, unpredictable, unshakable? Because once you do, you will notice something incredible. People will start listening to you more closely. They will start adjusting to your presence. They will start respecting you without knowing why. And that is the kind of power that cannot be taken away.